The entire auditorium fell silent the moment the boy opened his mouth.
Simon Cowell slowly leaned forward, his eyes narrowing in disbelief. No one in the room expected the voice that was about to shake the entire stage. Within seconds, the audience would be on their feet, judges would be crying, and the golden buzzer would explode in a moment that millions would never forget. But before we get into this unbelievable story, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to the channel, because stories like this remind us that sometimes the most powerful talent comes from the most unexpected places. On a crowded street in Manila, Philippines, where the sound of jeepneys, vendors, and busy traffic filled the air every day, a 13-year-old boy named Miguel sang beside a small food stall. His clothes were worn and faded, his shoes slightly torn, and his guitar had scratches all over it. But despite everything, Miguel sang with a passion that made people stop in their tracks. Miguel wasn't singing for fame. He was singing for survival. Every morning before the sun rose, Miguel would help his mother prepare small food packets they sold on the street. His father had passed away years earlier after a construction accident, leaving his mother to raise Miguel and his little sister alone. Money was always tight. Some days they barely had enough to eat. But Miguel had one escape from the struggles of life: music. At night, when the streets quieted down, he would sit under a flickering streetlight and practice singing with his old guitar. His mother would listen from the doorway of their tiny home, tears sometimes forming in her eyes. "You have a special voice, Miguel," she once told him softly. "One day the world will hear you." Miguel would smile shyly. Deep inside, he dreamed of singing on a big stage, but it felt impossible. Kids like him didn't get chances like that. One afternoon, while Miguel was singing his heart out on the street, a woman stopped nearby. She was holding her phone, quietly recording. She watched as people gathered around the boy, amazed by the emotion in his voice. After the song ended, she approached him. "Have you ever thought about auditioning for a talent show?" she asked. Miguel shook his head nervously. "People like me don't go on those shows." The woman smiled. "Talent doesn't care where you come from." A week later, something unbelievable happened. The video she posted of Miguel singing went viral online. Within days, it had millions of views. Comments flooded in from around the world. "Give this boy a chance. He deserves a stage. Someone bring him to a talent show." Soon after, a talent show producer reached out and invited Miguel to audition. When Miguel told his mother, she was speechless. "Are you serious?" she whispered. Miguel nodded, his hands shaking. "They want me to audition." His mother hugged him tightly. "This might be the opportunity God has been waiting to give you." For the first time in his life, Miguel boarded a plane and traveled to the city where the auditions were being held. Everything felt overwhelming. The giant buildings, the bright lights, the cameras, the crowds. Backstage, Miguel clutched his old guitar while watching other contestants prepare. Many of them had expensive outfits, professional coaches, and confident smiles. Miguel looked down at his worn shoes and wondered if he truly belonged there. Then his name was called. The stage lights were blinding as he walked out. The audience murmured quietly when they saw the small boy holding an old guitar. Simon Cowell looked at him curiously. "Hello there," Simon said. "What's your name?" "Miguel, sir," he replied nervously. "And where are you from?" "I'm from Manila. I sing on the street." The audience reacted with soft murmurs. Simon tilted his head slightly. "You sing on the street? And what made you come here today?" Miguel swallowed hard. "I want to help my mother and my sister." The room grew quiet. Simon nodded slowly. "All right, Miguel. Whenever you're ready." Miguel closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Then he started to sing. The first note floated through the theater like pure emotion. His voice was soft at first, trembling slightly, but then it grew stronger, richer, and filled with pain, hope, and beauty. Within seconds, the audience went completely silent. One judge covered her mouth in shock. Another judge whispered, "Oh my God."
Simon Cowell's expression changed instantly.
His usual serious look softened as he listened carefully.
Miguel sang with every ounce of emotion he had ever felt.
Every struggle, every sleepless night, every dream he carried poured into his voice.
Halfway through the song, the audience began to stand.
Tears rolled down the faces of several people in the crowd.
The final note echoed through the auditorium.
For a brief moment, there was silence. Then the entire theater exploded with applause. People jumped to their feet, cheering louder than anyone expected. One of the judges wiped away tears and looked at Simon. "I can't believe that voice came from someone so young."
Simon leaned forward slowly. "Miguel," he said, pausing for a moment.
"I've heard thousands of singers on this stage, but what you just did was something very special."
Miguel stood there frozen, barely breathing. Simon smiled slightly. "You didn't just sing. You told a story." The crowd erupted again. Then suddenly,
a judge slammed the golden buzzer. Golden confetti exploded into the air as the audience screamed with excitement. Miguel looked up in shock as golden pieces rained down around him. His hands covered his face as tears streamed down his cheeks. Backstage, his mother collapsed into tears while watching the moment on a monitor.
Simon stood up and clapped with the audience.
"Young man," Simon said proudly, "your life is about to change."
Miguel fell to his knees, overwhelmed with emotion. That moment changed everything.
Within days, the video of Miguel's audition spread across the internet, gaining tens of millions of views. People from all over the world shared his story.
Music producers began reaching out. Opportunities started pouring in. But the most important moment came weeks later. Miguel returned home to Manila.
The same street where he once sang for coins was now filled with cameras and reporters.
But Miguel wasn't there to perform.
He walked toward his small home, holding something in his hand.
A house key.
With the help of supporters and prize money from the show, Miguel had bought his mother a new home. When she saw the house, she burst into tears. "You did this?" she asked in disbelief.
Miguel smiled. "You always said the world would hear me."
Years later, Miguel would become one of the most loved singers to come from the Philippines. But no matter how famous he became, he never forgot the streets where his dream began. Because sometimes, the most powerful voices don't come from luxury studios or expensive schools. Sometimes they come from a small boy singing under a streetlight, believing that one day someone, somewhere, will finally listen. And if this story touched your heart, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more incredible stories that remind us that hope, talent, and determination can change lives forever.
The audience thought it was just another audition.
A skinny boy walked onto the stage wearing worn-out shoes, holding a cheap microphone with trembling hands.
Some people in the crowd whispered quietly. Simon Cowell looked at the boy with curiosity but also doubt.
But 30 seconds later, Simon would stand up in shock, judges would be wiping tears from their eyes, and the golden buzzer would slam down faster than anyone expected. And the entire world would discover the unbelievable story of a poor street singer from the Philippines. Before we begin, take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel, because stories like this prove that dreams can come true even when life seems impossible. The boy's name was Daniel Cruz. Daniel grew up in a crowded neighborhood in Cebu, Philippines. The houses were small, the streets were narrow, and life was never easy for families living there. Daniel lived with his mother and grandmother in a tiny one-room home made from old wood and metal sheets. His father had left when he was very young. Since then, his mother worked long hours washing clothes for neighbors just to earn a little money.
Some days they had food. Some days they didn't.
But there was one thing Daniel always had.
Music.
When Daniel was only 7 years old, he found an old broken radio in a trash pile. It barely worked, but sometimes it caught signals from local stations playing music. Daniel would sit beside it for hours, listening carefully to every song. He started copying the voices he heard. Slowly, he began singing.
At first it was just for fun.
But as he grew older, singing became something deeper. It became his escape from hunger, worry, and the constant struggles of life. By the time Daniel was 12, he had started singing on the streets. Every afternoon after school, he would stand near a busy market holding a small plastic cup while singing songs for passing strangers. Some people ignored him. Some people smiled. Sometimes someone dropped a few coins. But Daniel never stopped singing. Even when his voice was tired. Even when it rained. Even when people laughed. One night, while Daniel was singing outside a small restaurant, a tourist stopped to listen. The man looked surprised as the boy's powerful voice echoed through the street. He quietly recorded the performance on his phone. The next day, he uploaded the video online. At first, nothing happened. But a few days later, the video suddenly started spreading across social media. Thousands of people began sharing it. Comments poured in from all over the world. How is this boy not famous? This voice gave me chills. Someone get him on a talent show. The video reached. The judges were already preparing to press the red buzzer. A thin boy slowly walked onto the stage, wearing a faded shirt and holding an old guitar that looked like it had survived 100 rainy nights. Some people in the audience whispered to each other. Simon Cowell leaned back in his chair with a doubtful look. But no one knew that in the next 2 minutes, the entire theater would be crying, the audience would be standing and screaming, and the golden buzzer would rain down like a miracle. What happened on that stage would later be watched by millions around the world. But before we continue this incredible story, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel, because stories like this remind us that sometimes the greatest talent is hidden in the most unexpected places. In a crowded neighborhood of Davao City in the Philippines lived a quiet 15-year-old boy named Marco Reyes. Marco's life had never been easy. His family lived in a small wooden house beside a busy road. Trucks passed day and night, shaking the thin walls of their home. Marco's father used to work as a fisherman, but after a serious storm destroyed his boat, he could no longer earn a stable income. His mother sold fruits on the roadside to help feed the family. Some nights, dinner was just rice and salt. Marco saw the struggle in his parents' faces every day. And that's when music slowly became part of his life. When Marco was 9 years old, his father found a broken guitar thrown away near the harbor. One of the strings was missing and the wood was cracked. But Marco treated it like treasure. He spent weeks fixing it with tape and spare strings he found at a local shop. From that moment on, he practiced every single day. He watched free videos at internet cafes when he could afford it. He copied songs he heard on the radio. Sometimes he stayed awake late into the night quietly singing so he wouldn't wake his family. Music became his dream. But dreams are difficult when poverty surrounds you. When Marco turned 14, he started performing on the streets. Every afternoon he stood outside a busy shopping area with his old guitar. Cars passed by, people hurried past him, and the hot sun burned down on the pavement. Still, he kept singing. Some people ignored him. Some people smiled. Sometimes someone dropped a few coins. But Marco didn't sing for money alone. He sang because it was the only place where he truly felt free. One evening, while Marco was singing an emotional ballad, a group of college students stopped to listen. They were surprised by the power in his voice. One of them quietly recorded the performance. The next day they uploaded the video online. At first, it seemed like just another street video. But within days, something incredible happened. The clip began spreading across social media. Thousands of people shared it. Then hundreds of thousands. Comments flooded the video. Who is this boy? This voice gave me goosebumps. He belongs on a big stage. Soon the video reached producers from a famous international talent competition. They were shocked. The raw emotion in Marco's voice was impossible to ignore. A week later, Marco received a phone call. He had been invited to audition. When he told his parents, his father sat quietly for a moment, then smiled proudly. "This might be your chance," he said. A few weeks later, Marco traveled to the audition city. It was the first time he had ever left his hometown. The buildings looked huge. The crowds were overwhelming. Backstage, he saw dozens of contestants practicing with professional equipment. Marco held his old guitar tightly. He suddenly felt nervous. What if they laugh at me, he thought. Then a stage assistant called his name. Marco took a deep breath and walked onto the stage. The audience clapped politely. Simon Cowell looked at him curiously. "Hello. What's your name?" "My name is Marco Reyes." "And where are you from, Marco?" "I'm from Davao City in the Philippines." Simon nodded. "And what do you do there?" Marco hesitated. "I sing on the streets." A small murmur moved through the audience. Simon raised his eyebrows slightly. "All right, Marco, show us what you've got." Marco closed his eyes. He thought about his parents. He thought about the small house shaking beside the road. He thought about the nights he sang under streetlights. Then he started playing his guitar. The first note was soft. But when he began singing, the entire room changed. His voice was deep, emotional, and unbelievably powerful. Simon's expression instantly shifted. One judge covered her mouth in shock. The audience became completely silent. Marco continued singing, pouring every emotion from his life into the performance. You could hear the pain. You could hear the hope. You could hear the dream he had carried for years. Halfway through the song, people in the audience were already wiping tears from their eyes. Simon leaned forward, completely focused. When Marco reached the final note, his voice soared through the theater with breathtaking power. The sound echoed across the room. For a moment, complete silence. Then suddenly the audience exploded with applause. People jumped to their feet. The judges stood up. Simon Cowell clapped slowly, shaking his head in disbelief. "Marco," he said, "that was one of the most honest performances we've ever heard." Marco stood there, stunned. Another judge wiped tears from her face. "You reminded us why music exists," she said softly. Then without warning, slam! The golden buzzer was pressed. Golden confetti burst from above as the crowd screamed with excitement. Marco looked up in shock as the golden rain fell around him. He dropped his guitar and covered his face, crying. Backstage, his parents watched the moment on a screen and hugged each other tightly. Simon walked onto the stage and placed a hand on Marco's shoulder. "You walked in here as a street singer," Simon said proudly, "but you just proved you belong on the biggest stages in the world." That moment changed Marco's life forever. Within hours, his audition video went viral across the globe. Millions of people watched the poor Filipino boy who shocked Simon Cowell. Messages of support poured in from everywhere. But the most beautiful moment came months later. Marco returned home to the same street where he used to sing. Only this time, the street was full of people cheering for him. Cameras flashed. Neighbors celebrated. But Marco wasn't there to perform. He walked toward his parents and handed them something small. A key. With the help of supporters and prize money, Marco had bought his family a new home. His mother cried as she hugged him. "You turned our struggle into hope," she whispered. Marco smiled. Because he had learned something powerful. Dreams don't care where you start. They don't care how poor you are. All they need is courage, passion, and one chance. And if this story touched your heart, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more incredible stories that remind us that miracles can happen when someone finally listens. Adrian looked stunned. Another judge leaned toward the buzzer. "You deserve something special," she said emotionally. Then, slam! The golden buzzer exploded. Golden confetti rained down from the ceiling as the audience screamed with excitement.
Adrian covered his face and burst into tears. Backstage, his mother collapsed into tears while watching the moment on a screen. Simon walked onto the stage and shook Adrian's hand. "You came from the streets," Simon said proudly, "but that voice belongs on the biggest stages in the world." Within hours, Adrian's audition video spread across the internet. Millions of people watched the poor street singer who shocked Simon Cowell. His story inspired people everywhere. But the most emotional moment came months later. After the competition, Adrian returned home to the same street corner where he once sang for coins. Only this time, hundreds of people were waiting for him. Cameras flashed. Fans cheered. But Adrian didn't go there to perform. Instead, he walked to his mother and handed her a small envelope. Inside was the key to a brand new home. His mother broke down crying. "You changed our lives," she whispered. Adrian smiled softly. Because he knew something the world often forgets. Sometimes the most powerful voices come from the quietest places. Sometimes the biggest dreams grow in the poorest streets. And sometimes, all it takes is one chance for the whole world to finally listen. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories that prove dreams really do come true.